Spring has sprung, but while flowers are blooming, allergens can be looming. So here's what you need to know to keep your dog healthy this season. Welcome back to Alpha Paw, your destination for everything dog. I'm Bernie Zilio, and I'm on a mission to answer every doggone question you have ever had about your fur babies. And today, we are talking about 3 changes you need to make in your dog's life because it's now spring. Fortunately, we have an expert with us today, Dr. Ross Bernstein. Dr. Ross is a seasoned veterinary professional and pet care expert. He earned his doctorate degree in veterinary medicine at UC Davis School of Veterinary Medicine, and his work has been featured in several industry-leading publications, including the Journal of Veterinary Surgery. He is our go-to vet for everything we want and need to know about our fur babies. So welcome back to Alpha Paw, Dr. Ross.
Hey, Bernie. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thank you so much for being here. Now, we've been doing this a little while now, so we've been able to talk about what to do with our dogs in terms of any changes we need to make in their lives when it comes to different seasons. So we've gone through how to handle the heat of the summer, the cold of the winter, and now I'm sure everyone is super excited. It is springtime, basically around the corner. So exciting. So given that information, I know that we need to make some changes for our dogs. And one of the things that becomes way more prevalent in the springtime is allergens. So how can we protect our dogs from allergens? How can we spot different symptoms in our dogs? Kind of talk us through the whole springtime situation if you can.
I guess it depends what part of the country you're in or really around the world. But in the spring, lots of flowers are blooming, grasses are growing. Sometimes the weather's, the wind is blowing and it's blowing all these new pollen seeds and other leaves around. And our dogs are outside walking around and running in it. And a lot of them have environmental allergies. And it's super, super common. One of the most common things that general practitioners treat. And there are special veterinarians called allergists, or sometimes they fall under the category dermatologists, that treat these environmental allergies. So some of the signs that your dog might have environmental allergies, it's usually where they come into contact with them. So they can be, if they're stepping in it, you often see them that they're licking their paws a lot. And so you can, on the one hand, see that they're licking and chewing their paws nonstop. Sometimes even putting their whole paw inside their mouth.
Yes, I've seen dogs do that, and it's quite hilarious.
Sometimes in these little white fluffy dogs, or sometimes you can see them in any dog really, but if they're licking a lot, they can get the saliva staining or this purple coloration change on their paws that can indicate that they are starting to develop a secondary yeast infection over there from all the licking and chewing. They can also get itchy pretty much all over their body too. And it can start to affect their hair coat and their coat quality. Their fur can get a little drier. And hopefully they aren't scratching or excoriating their skin and hair to the point that their skin is breaking and they get secondary infections. But some dogs certainly do go at it a lot before they come into the vet. And that can just make some secondary infections come into play as well.
Yeah. And I know that we've talked about, I think the biggest factors in terms of allergens for our dogs would be like food allergens and then environmental allergens. So we've talked a lot about food allergens. And the thing with environmental allergens is that they're just so much more pervasive during the springtime. So I think it's super important for everybody to just keep an eye on those like signs and symptoms that their dogs may be uncomfortable or itchy or stepped in something or there's something on their skin. So Dr. Ross, given all of that information, what kind of treatment options are there and how can we prevent our dogs from feeling this like discomfort, the itchiness, all of the symptoms of allergies?
Yeah, the number one thing that your vet is going to recommend is something to stop the itch cycle. So your vet is going to have very good and strong medications, whether they're oral medications or injectable, but that's going to be number one. Some things that you can do at home is you can have them wear the cone or the e-collar to prevent them from doing further damage to themselves. You can also give them baths and give them stuff like oatmeal shampoos, so that's very soft and soothing to their skin. But probably one of the things that helps the most, especially if they're licking and chewing at their paws, is wiping them off with stuff like baby wipes, for example, that gets those extra allergens off their skin. If you're doing all that and it's still getting worse, your vet can do specific allergy testing in the skin and seeing what is the specific allergen, if at all possible, they are allergic to. And then you can tailor your treatment to avoiding pine, for example, or whatever the other flower may be.
Yeah, that's so interesting you say that about wiping paws. You don't even realize how important it is. I recently took my dog Pod on a hike. We came back and outwardly, I wiped his paws and they looked fine, but I noticed he was kind of like uncomfortable chewing at his paws. So I had to get in the paw pads with like a baby wipe, and he had, just a bunch of stuff that was on the ground kind of shoved in there. So it could be a huge relief for your dogs, just like making sure their paws are clean after taking them out. So what are some of the other things that we can be doing, like for our dog's daily routine, to kind of alleviate any of these symptoms or prevent new allergies from forming?
Yeah, it's not necessarily an allergy, but as the weather changes, as it gets warmer, something in the environment, and dogs are going outside more probably, is you want to make sure that they're up to date on their flea, tick, and heartworm preventatives. So heartworm is a disease that is transmitted by mosquitoes. So as it gets warmer, the mosquitoes that multiply in standing water, especially in areas that it's going to be a little bit warmer. And if it rains and the snow is melting and it gets warmer, the mosquitoes are going to start multiplying and proliferating. And especially in areas in the Midwest, in southeastern United States, heartworm is a huge issue. Thankfully, here in Southern California, it's not that bad, but still, there are cases that are reported. Dogs travel around. Mosquitoes can also, if they infect one dog in Louisiana or something, and their owners move here or they're adopted and come over here, and a mosquito here bites your dog here and then flies away and bites your dog, they could still transmit heartworm disease that way. So it's still very important, no matter what the prevalence is, to make sure that your dogs are up to date on heartworm preventatives and talk to your vet about it, because you don't want to start them on heartworm preventatives if they already have heartworm disease. So that can be very, very dangerous and important to keep track of as well.
Okay, so I have heard the word heartworm since dogs became my first obsession, but I don't actually know like what it is. I hope that's not a stupid question, but can you just
it's not.
Explain what heartworm is? Okay.
Yeah, heartworms are a disease, and it's a bit of a misnomer actually, because they are worms that they live inside the blood vessels. They're going to live in the vein that's going back into the heart. And sometimes they can migrate into the heart. And if you're doing an echocardiogram, it's super scary if you suddenly see this big worm hanging out inside the heart. But usually, if your dog has heartworm disease, they're going to present with respiratory complications. So you might see that they're breathing very rapidly, or they have exercise intolerance, meaning they can't run very fast without getting or they can't run very far without getting out of breath. Sometimes they can have pale or cyanotic mucous membranes, meaning their gums can be pale or blue. Sometimes even have a distended abdomen because they go into what's called the heart failure, and the blood basically backs up. But it's as a veterinarian and when I was a student, it's super cool going into some of these surgeries where you can peel out these worms from inside these major blood vessels one by one, which is super cool to me. But it's
spoken like a true veterinarian, because I don't think pet parents want to know that their dogs are infested with worms, and you're like, yeah, that's so cool, let's get in there. But I mean, okay, it sounds terrifying as a pet owner.
And as a pet owner, I want to say I had the opportunity to go to Nicaragua a few times where, I mean, none of those animals are on preventatives, and they live outside a lot. And there's a ton of mosquitoes over there. It's basically in the rainforest. And if you do blood tests on them, you can see they're called microfilaria, which is kind of like the larval stage of the worms. And you can see them swimming around in the blood, which is pretty cool, but also bad.
Yeah, it's awful. And I'm glad we spoke about this because I want everyone who's watching this to be just as freaked out and grossed out as I am, because that's how important it is to make sure your dog does not get heartworm. Okay, last question before we wrap this up. So we've spoken a lot about environmental factors. I think that's incredibly useful information. But what about things that are like within our own home? Are there things that we should be doing to make sure our dogs stay safe, like spring and then going into summertime?
Yeah, another thing that you can be aware of is getting your dogs back onto a healthy diet and healthy weight. So next time you're bringing them to the vet, if they haven't been doing as much exercise when it's been cold outside, you want to ask your vet, is my dog the right weight? Don't take it personally. Your vet just wants to tell you what's the right weight for your dog. And there was a study in Labradors that showed that dogs that are overweight have a reduced lifespan, and it can be up to 2 years. So having an obese or overweight pet can impact pretty much every organ in the body, and it has adverse outcomes on their quality of life and life expectancy. So reducing their weight, having them on a restricted diet, basically meaning don't just let them eat whatever they want, whenever they want, and exercise is important.
All right. Well, I think that that's a good rule of thumb for us pet parents as well. It's time to shed the winter coat, eat well, go outside, but protect yourself from the mosquitoes. We don't want the heartworm. All right. Well, this has been super helpful as always, Dr. Ross. And if you guys, our viewers, have any more questions for myself or Dr. Ross, go ahead and drop them down in the comment section below. Again, I'm Bernie Zilio, and this is Alpha Paw. Be sure you subscribe to our channel so you don't miss one single doggone episode. And we'll see you guys next time.